Hello, and welcome to CMMI Tech Talk. In this video, we will look at how to appraise the sustaining habit and persistence practice areas. As with most current models and frameworks across multiple industries, the concept of governance is one that is central or foundational to successful adoption and effectiveness. This is also true with CMMI. The governance or GOV practice area, along with its counterpart of implementation infrastructure II and the sustaining habit and persistence or SHIP capability area, are both essential to effective adoption of CMMI best practices. First and foremost, an organization adopting CMMI to improve its performance and processes should consider the adoption as an investment in the organization, with clear performance objectives and improved business outcomes as the primary end result. Adopting any framework without clear performance objectives or improved business outcomes is merely an administrative or one-time compliance exercise that adds little to no value to the business. This isn't just true for CMMI, as it has proven performance improvement outcomes as demonstrated in the CMMI Performance Solutions Performance Report Summary. Multiple industries, verticals, and regulatory agencies have relied primarily on a compliance-based focus and assumption. That assumption can be summarized by saying, if they are compliant with a selected or targeted standard, regulation, model, or framework, they must be capable and able to perform better in that area of focus. But that's often not the case for approaches that rely solely or primarily on a one and done or infrequent compliance check approach, unless the compliance check or audit is part of a larger, more continuously focused approach that monitors patterns and trends in performance over time and takes action to address and improve it. All this requires a continued investment in performance improvement. So, logically, if an organization or team is going to invest their budget, time, effort, and people into taking steps to improve their capabilities and performance, they would want those improvements to last and continue to help the business. Business objectives, investment management, critical for the business. Gee, why does that all sound like it's squarely on the shoulders of senior and executive management? Because it is on their shoulders. In fact, that's a big part of their job description and a foundational expectation in any governance framework or standard. In the CMMI model, the term persistent and habitual describes the routine way of doing business and following and improving processes that an organization uses as a part of its corporate culture. Persistence is the firm or stubborn continuance in a course of action despite difficulty or opposition. Habits are tendencies or practices, especially ones that are hard to give up. This figure from the CMMI model shows the 4 characteristics of process persistence and habit, which describes the 4 key characteristics for understanding and creating persistent and habitual processes within an organization. You don't see the words CMMI Practices or practices in that graphic. That's because the focus is on the business process enduring and continually improving and not on a CMMI practice. This is an important distinction in CMMI performance solutions. Mature organizations will recognize the value of keeping their processes and their outputs organized, which is captured as a best practice in the CMMI for Process Asset Development Practice area in Practice 3.2. Develop, record, and keep updated a process architecture that describes the structure of the organization's processes and process assets. So let's talk about how to appraise the governance practice area. This CMMI practice area contains practices senior management performs to promote the way work is accomplished that is relevant and important to the business and to the organization. Visible and active management involvement is critical to the success of performance improvement and process implementation in an organization. The appraisal team must verify that management accomplishes their role by reviewing objective evidence such as documents, systems, data, and measurements for the organization, and also interviewing management by asking questions such as, how are you involved as a senior manager in setting the strategy, direction, and expectations for performance improvement? How do you direct and then verify that processes are aligned with business needs and objectives? How do you measure success and performance against those objectives? How are you involved in the performance and effectiveness of the processes? How do you provide adequate resources for process and performance improvement? What specific actions are you personally taking to promote and reward the development and use of processes to ensure their continued use and improvement? How do you know your investment in performance improvement is working or paying off? The appraisal team then compiles the results of this evidence review and then verifies that it applies and supports all the process and performance efforts across the organization and projects. Governance practices are applied to processes and their implementation and improvement, but not to CMMI model practices. And what about appraising the implementation infrastructure practice area? This practice area describes the necessary infrastructure to build, follow, sustain, and improve processes over time. The term infrastructure in this practice area refers to everything needed to implement, perform, and sustain the organization's set of processes. Appraisal teams are required not only by the implementation infrastructure practice area, but also by the related process management, PCM, and process asset development, PAD, practice areas. Managing performance and measurement, MPM, and process quality assurance, PQA, also provide best practices to measure process performance results and objectively evaluate the processes and their outcomes. This means an appraisal team not only looks at the process team's efforts, but also verifies that those efforts are actually working well for the project's support functions and management. Appraisal teams verify this by reviewing objective evidence for these infrastructure requirements by asking, how does the organization develop and keep process descriptions and assets current? Please explain how you know that resource availability is aligned to needs such as people, tools, consumables, facilities, time to perform, etc. What funding and other support has been provided to perform the processes? Please describe the training you've received to perform the process activities relevant to assigned responsibilities. How are objective process evaluations conducted to ensure that work is performed as intended? Who does this? When do they do it? How often? How do they know what to evaluate? Without an infrastructure, processes may not be followed, sustained, or improved over time. And it's not enough to see that this is done just for the appraisal activities and event. Appraisal teams must review evidence that shows a clear pattern of persistence and habit before and after the appraisal. A process is neither persistent nor habitual if it is ignored, abandoned under pressure, or if disciplined execution of the process erodes over time or is done just to pass an appraisal. When an organization begins a performance improvement initiative, the goal is for the improvements to last and become the way we do business. In other words, the organization is forming new habits. Once established, a new habit becomes very difficult to break and is persistent. And it's the job of the entire appraisal team, including the appraisal team leader, to verify that this is clear and consistent in the evidence they appraise. Thank you for joining us for this CMMI Tech Talk, where we looked at how the practice areas of governance and implementation infrastructure are appraised. If you are an organization looking to be appraised, your appraisal team leader can also provide some further information on this practice. For questions or further information, contact us at support.isaca.org.